Let's review the Administration tab and all the options contained within. At the top of the screen, you'll notice the Administration tab next to the Inspection tab. That Administration tab is available in any of the client view screens. Once you click on Administration, you can see the options along the top. The first one we have is engineers. These are the people out in the field actually doing the testing. You can add different engineers. You can see the list of engineers. You can add the information for the specific engineer in here. You can determine whether they're active or inactive. You can delete the engineers, and you can add the signature file to add to the report. So if you want a report to come out with a signature attached to it, this is where you add that file for the signature to put in reports. The next thing we see is the test instruments. This is the SMFT 1000s that have been added into TruTest. Now, you don't necessarily need to add the instrument in here, but it will be helpful. You can do things like add new SMFT 1000s in here. You can put information about the tool in there. You can delete the tool. One really important thing to add in here is the last calibration date. The SMFT 1000s come calibrated from the factory. It's recommended that they be recalibrated on an annual basis. You can also put notes in here about who this SMFT is assigned to, so you can know who the technician is that's using this SMFT 1000. This is another location where you can do a firmware update. As I mentioned in a previous section of the video, when you download data from the SMFT 1000, it will automatically check to see if there is a new version of the firmware available. You can also manually check for updated firmware. Click the firmware update button. This screen will pop up. Remember, you need to connect the SMFT 1000 to your computer using that optical to USB cable. You set the rotary switch on the SMFT 1000 to the menu section, and then click Next. It will say, look for the firmware. If there is firmware available, you can do an update here. Just a reminder, it does take about 20 minutes to update the firmware, so make sure that you have the time available. You will not be able to use TruTest or the SMFT 1000 while it is doing the software update. The next section is the company info. Here you can add information about your company, name, address. Most importantly, you can add a company logo. If you have an advanced license to the TruTest software, you can add a company logo. This will be attached to any reports that you export from TruTest. Now we have the certificate settings. There's no user adjustable fields in here at this point, so nothing to go into and adjust in there. We can back up TruTest here as well. We can select the backup location when we do this. When we exit TruTest, every time you exit the program, it will ask you if you want to back up. If you say yes, which is a good idea, it's going to automatically save that backup into this folder, C Program Data TruTest Backup. That's different than manually creating a backup, which we see in the Administration tab. When we manually create a backup, we can determine where we want to save that backup to. I saved mine to my Downloads folder. That's where I put temporary files. You can save it to any folder you want, but when you exit TruTest, it's automatically going to put this in the TruTest backup folder. So if you need a backup, you can always go back to that folder and pull the backup file from there. Restore is a way to pull information in using that backup file. Now, we talked about in an earlier section of the video the backed up test information. When we download test information from the SMFT 1000, it creates a backup file specifically of that test data. This backup is a backup of all the data in TruTest. So in this instance of TruTest, I have 3 different clients. Each client has a site. There may be multiple sites for each client. There could be multiple inspections for each site. All that data is backed up when you do a backup or a restore using these settings here. You can select the file to backup either from the TruTest folder or from a different folder that you designated when you did a manual backup there. You can click on account info. This is going to give you information for the administrator who controls the license to TruTest. This is where you can go in and change your password. This is only the administrator under this account info. Under users, you can see people who are permitted to use TruTest. Now, again, TruTest is not a cloud-based software, so you can only use the TruTest version that is on a specific computer. We have a lot of clients who will have TruTest on a desktop computer in the shop where different users can go in and access that software. In users, you can see who is in TruTest already. You can add new users, you can delete users, and you can change a password. Users can only access that version of TruTest on that specific computer. You can also change their access level. When you do the dropdown, you can choose what level of access they have. The access level information is contained in the manual, which you can get to with the question mark in the upper right-hand side. But here's an overview. Users report can only create reports. They can print reports, they can print user information, that's it. The user download can do all the report stuff, plus they can transfer data between the SMFT 1000 and TruTest. Users who have modified can do the stuff that the report and the download level can do. They can also create new items in TruTest. They can change the tree structures. They can manage engineers. They can manage test instruments, change client and company information. Basically, this user modify level can do pretty much everything in TruTest. Auto test code is not used in the solder module. That's used in other modules in TruTest for our installation instruments, but it's not used for our solar instruments. And then you have admin. That's the person who controls the passwords. They control the license to that version of TruTest that you're using. The next thing in administration is the PV module database. We saw this a little bit in the actual inspection, but you can also access it through the administration tab. When you click on that, this is what comes up. You can see the number of modules in the database. This is a third-party database that's always being updated. You have to have an advanced license to be able to transfer module data from TruTest into the SMFT 1000, which is very handy way to do it because you don't have to then manually enter that module data. You can see all the module data in the table there. You can connect with the SMFT 1000 to upload or delete module data from the SMFT 1000, connect it to the computer with that optical to USB cable. If you have a new firmware version, it will prompt you. Again, it takes 20 minutes to update if you're going to do that. You can download data from the SMFT 1000. If this is your first time doing this, there's not going to be any module data there. I have module data on my SMFT 1000, so you can see I've got probably about a dozen different modules loaded into it already. From here, you can search the database. You're going to want to search with the manufacturer name and the exact model number. Once you get in there, be sure to verify that the information of the module you have matches that exact model data as well. Sometimes there can be discrepancies even with the same model number. Once you find the one you want, select that module, and then you're going to use this caret to the right here, this button in the middle, to move that module data from the module database onto the SMFT 1000. The list on the right is the modules that are already in the SMFT 1000, and you can delete modules that are saved on there if you need to. You can store about 21 modules in the SMFT 1000 at any one time, so you can get a good number of modules on there. Once you've selected the modules you want to put onto the tool, you hit the send to the SMFT button, and then it's going to export all that data into the SMFT 1000. If you deleted things, we'll also remove them from the tool as well. If you find that you have a module that is not in the database, you can add a new module. So when you go in, click on the new module, you have to add all of this data. This data comes from the module specifications sheet. That could be the spec sheet or the data on the actual back of the module. You're going to get most of the things in here from that spec sheet. The one thing that you won't find on a spec sheet is fill factor. And you can see the formula here. It's maximum power voltage times maximum power current divided by open circuit voltage times short circuit current. It's going to give you a decimal that is less than 1, and you need to convert the decimal to a percentage before you add it into TruTest. So in this example, the result was 0.74. I just move the decimal place over 2 places and get 74%. It's going to be a number less than 100, and it's usually between 70 to 80%, depending on how efficient the module is. Once you've added all of that data, you can save that module to the database. Once you've saved it to the database, it will be in there in perpetuity. You can always go back and access that module in the future. You can also click Inverter Database. We do not subscribe to a third-party inverter database. So any inverters that you want to add to your reporting, you'll need to manually enter into TruTest. Very similar to the module list, I've already added this Outback Power inverter. That's the inverter that I have at my house where I've done a lot of this testing. You can edit the inverter specifications, you can delete the inverter, and you can add a new one. Very similar to modules, you go in, get the data from the inverter specification sheet, add it in here. Once you save it to the database, it will be included in that database in the future, so you don't have to add that again. You can just go select it when you need to. That's all the things in the administrative tab within TruTest.